Let's turn our attention to the men's All-Ireland final this weekend. It is Dublin against Tyrone. It's not the first time, obviously, that they faced off in an All-Ireland final. Delighted to say we've got John O'Leary with us, a former Dublin All-Ireland winning captain and a legendary goalkeeper. John, a couple of quick things before we get into some of the titanic battles that you would have had against Tyrone down through the years. It seems at this point that the biggest enemy that the Dublin team are going to have is complacency. How do they prevent that being something, given that they haven't really been fallen victim to it before, but at some point, how do they actually prevent that being an issue for themselves?
I think they just need to talk about it and constantly keep it on top of the agenda, because it is a risk no matter who you're playing. I think probably because it's Tyrone, I think that's less to be a risk because Tyrone will always pull up to you. They played a close game there in the round robin up in home as we one score in it, and I think that would keep Dublin well grounded. But you're right. I mean, it's hard to guard against, and even all the thing we talk about, it's still a risk that it creeps into fella's psyche. If we're going for 4 in a row. But there's probably a couple of players there on the team. It's going only their second one, like Sir Brian Howard, and they will hopefully won't get caught up in it. But it's a tough thing to guard against.
Yeah, I guess the best thing that Jim Gavin has is that he can threaten to drop anybody, and he's got a track record of dropping big names ahead of big games. So that's the bit that means that everybody has to train really hard right up to the last minute, and that's the bit you hope that prevents the complacency from seeping in.
I think so, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I remember ourselves, back in '95, we had been beaten the year before, '94, '93 semi-final, '92 final. So you're always, because it was so likely the reverse, we were, can it happen again? Like, can you lose again? So you need to talk about it and guard against, to make everyone aware of it. I think one of the things that might suit Dublin is that was the Roscommon match, because that allowed Jim to give a lot of players, pitch time, and might normally got it. That was an ultra-competitive game, one they had to win. So I think that has kept the Dublin panel alive, and they demonstrated that day. They went out score was 4-24. That they're competitive, they're hungry, and I think that's when you look back at it, a Dublin win on Sunday might be one of the best things that happened to Dublin this year.
There's not really a whole heap of debate about who plays if everybody's fit. Now, Cian O'Sullivan is apparently okay to play, and that's a huge thing just in terms of how they want to play the game. But are there any real selection dilemmas as far as you can make out at this point in the week?
I don't think so. I mean, they've been playing well, winning games. Cian O'Sullivan will be a risk if he wasn't playing. But I mean, ultimately, he has the comfort that most people don't have of picking a squad, a player. There are 15 players in the squad, of maybe, I don't know, 20, 25 players who are competitive and don't take away from the team ethos or the skill level of the team if he has to make a couple of changes. So I don't really see any starting 15 but selection dilemmas for him.
John, talk to us a little bit about kind of how the whole society around Dublin football has changed in the past 23 years, because like when you look at 1995, you do wonder, was there a hype element to things with, I don't know, celebrations and then the following years, and I guess the competitive All-Ireland Championship as well. Did that get to you at that time, and can you see a huge difference now in how Jim Gavin has managed to insulate his players from the hype around the county and being in the capital and all that?
Yeah, there was a lot of hype. I was there in '83 as well, and it was a long time waiting to 95, and obviously, and then 2011, there was big gaps. So there was lots of hype around 95. We've been beaten the final the year before and semi-final, 2 years before that as well. So I suppose we were a team who were thereabouts, we couldn't make the breakthrough. Jim has managed to make the breakthrough through Pat Kilroy, and then Jim's carried it on, and they've managed to stay at the table, for the last couple of years. So there's plenty of hype, and it's different hype. It's type of 4 in a row, kind of keep going, and there's people are nervous. It's Tyrone, you get nothing easy off them, and they will keep Dublin fans on their toes, and no doubt the players. But you're right, Jim has managed to insulate the squad against all the hype and keep fellas grounded and keep the conversations grounded, and I think that's a huge reason why they've been so successful.
Yeah, like I often wonder if that's definitely what's happening. I mean, like, I'm sure that is what's happening, but at the same time, if you think about what's motivating Dublin at the moment, the idea of doing 4 in a row and then the potential of next year, if they win this Sunday, like cementing their place as possibly the greatest Gaelic football team we'll ever see or have ever seen anyway. So is that not a motivation? Is that hype that might penetrate around the 4 in a row not motivation in itself, that, lads, you can become the best team ever, and everybody outside the camp is telling you that? Like, there's motivation in that, isn't there?
There is, yes, but there's also a high risk that you get focused on the record. You know, if you go back to 1982 when Kerry were going for 5 in a row and T-shirts being printed outside the ground, like 5 in a row and all that sort of stuff, you can get caught up in that, and that can't seep in. So, there's lots of ways of cutting that argument. You forget about it. You're really going for 1 in a row because you start back in January, so clocks are back to 0. And, back in January it's about winning this year's championship, and then you can look back statistically and say, that's 4 in a row, or 3 in a row, or 2 in a row. And, for like Owen Merchant, it's probably he's going for his first 1 in a row for him, and maybe 2 in a row for Brian Howard. So there's lots of fellas within the squad there who don't have the 4. But you can cut it both ways. I think ultimately history will decide which way you went for was right. So you got to avoid the unrealistic hype of the fans and the backslap and stuff, because that'll listen very, very quickly, and you just got to stay grounded.
John, Dermot Connolly kicked 12 points last night in the Boston final. He looks really in amazing shape, and I guess just for neutral fans, it's really disappointing that he's not involved in the championship this year, because you'd really love to see what he could do within the current Dublin team. Is there any sense of fear from the Dublin faithful that not having Connolly to call on the way they, he kind of rode to the rescue last year when they did need him against Mayo, that's something that causes concern or worry ahead of this game?
I don't think so at the moment. I mean, again, if the result goes against us, you might say, Dermot Connolly should have been there. Why was he there? And then people go down that avenue. I think, we talk about the squads and how good the squad is, and then we revert to a conversation with Dermot Connolly. So I think the results would dictate that debate. I think they've got back to the All-Ireland final again without him, and it's sad that he's not around, because he's been really a great for Dublin the last couple of years. But the team is bigger than one individual. Bernard Brogan has been not even a bit player this year, and we've managed to plough on and get to the same stage back again to the All-Ireland final. And would he play a part? Yes, no, who knows? And I think they're interesting debates about for the kitchen table at the bar stool come November, December.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the other thing that, we're talking about the squad, but there's also been really significant turnover as the team has gone through this period, and I suppose that's what you're talking about when there's a few players who only have 1 or 2, which I think maybe marks this team out in a significant way from the Kerry team that nearly did 5 in a row, is that there has been way more transition in this group of players, because Cluxton is still there, and because I think there's only 6 of them who actually have all of the medals from the time that Pat Gilroy wins the first one, which is a fairly astonishing achievement for those 6. But for everybody else, there is still that kind of sense of being on their toes and not being sure of their place. And even in amongst those, there's a couple who aren't actually in the first choice anymore. Absolutely,
yeah. You're sitting in that squad there, and you're getting a chance, for it's on your second year in the squad, your third year in the squad, and maybe some of those years I've played 2 years ago and haven't played much since. So it is very different when you look back in history that, there are so few who have medals back as far as 2011. But it's like we keep talking about, I think it's been a testament to Jim and the squad and the players themselves that players have sort of eased in and eased out, and it'll be a good quiz question out of that now. Dublin players have won how many they have for the last couple of years, because the team has changed so often. I wouldn't score very high in that quiz, because it's hard to remember fellas who's come and gone, whether did they start that year or this year. And I think that has been one of the pleasing things about us, that he's been the ability to keep the thing fresh. I think from within, when you're looking at the fans outside, you can't remember the team from last year or the year before, but that has ultimately meant that the Dublin machine has been able to plough on, and that's how the squad, it's been the ultimate, outcome of the squad being, the real strength within what they're trying to do.
Yeah, fair enough. Just wanted to talk to you a little bit briefly about 1995 before we finish up. What are your recollections of the build-up to that game, and how much attention did you have to pay to Tyrone in the build-up to that game?
Well, I think from my memory, really, the real thing that I would have focused on as a captain was that it was about, not making the assumption that it was our turn. As I said to me, with the 4 games in 91, we lost 92 to Donegal, 93 semi-final to Derry, 94 final to Down, and here we were, another Ulster team coming up against us, and the real thing we had to guard against was that you could fall into that trap saying, well, it's our turn and we'll surely win this, and we couldn't lose another one again. So a lot of our focus was on that sort of the mental thinking about it, and we would have known a whole lot about Tyrone, and there was no back door then, and but here for us was another team coming from Ulster that we hadn't played, and we're coming up against somebody new, and so most of the shot that year from our the spectacle was really about guarding against complacency of making the assumption you'd win it because you were there again.
Yeah, it's like when you mentioned the lack of a back door there as well, it is very interesting when you put it into the context of your Dublin team as well, given how ferociously tough Leinster was in the 1990s. Like, how big an incentive was that for you, and how big a reason was that for you to survive, I guess, through the All-Ireland series in 1995, that you got so toughly conditioned through play coming up against the likes of the Meads and the Kildares, and to a certain extent during your career anyway, the Offaly's of Leinster?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the mentality is like if you like within the setup, but certainly in our day, it was either win or go home, and if you lost, that was it until the following June. So I mean, we turned up in '96 then and lost got knocked up by Meath in the Leinster final, and you're gone. So it was a very different feeling, and I think the tension must be within the players, and the setup is it's all or nothing. There is no second chance, and so. I mean, it must be very different that even if you do lose the game, when I suppose you get conditioned that it's not good maybe the next time you're going through the back door. But it certainly feels very different from memory looking back. Was that you could go out in June and it was a lonely 10 months before you got a chance to get back in the championship again.
John, what do you think is going to happen this weekend? Like, I think everybody is predicting a Dublin victory. So at this point, apart from a few brave hearts from Tyrone, for sure. But what do you actually think is going to happen? What is going to be the ebb and flow of this match?
God knows. I mean, I'm on the record of saying back before the round robin started, I thought there will be a Dublin Tyrone final. I think because I just think Tyrone have they've always displayed that tenacity of sticking at it and they come through the back door more often than the other county, and I think. My experience, I would have played them twice in the championship, and you get nothing easy off them. And when I finished playing Central and Dublin battles since then, they've gone on to win. It was the 3 All-Irelands, or they have the ability to win All-Irelands. They know what it takes. There's a sense of winning within the county. So I always view Tyrone, nervously that you get nothing handy off them. So I think it'll be very cagey. I think it'll be a lot of sort of mash-ups. It'll be interesting who matches up to who marks who. Will they go man to man? Will they sit back? And there are those, the what ifs. I just think it'll be. I mean, if Dublin are to win it, they won't win it easy, and I think they won't win it until maybe 5-10 minutes to go before you might get any comfort of them pulling away. But I just don't see it handy. It's a final. I mean, it's Tyrone. Of all the teams you'd be playing in the final, you get a tough game. Historically, I always feel it's Tyrone.
We were saying the same thing last year, John. Tyrone coming into the game as Ulster champions, Tyrone coming into the game with one of the best players they've ever had in Sean Kavanagh. Like, what would suggest that they've made a quantum leap? Because a quantum leap is required for them to come anywhere near this Dublin team.
Yeah, and I think the fact that they went through it will be the quantum leap that they make sure that won't happen again. The exciting thing of last year, I think, was just the second half performance of Tyrone. And that was really, really surprising that, having been in half time and then just come out and play the same way again, where you obviously wasn't working. But I would have to make the assumption that Mickey Hart and his team have learned from that, and maybe players within that squad saying, bloody hell, there's no way this is going to happen again to us. And that's enough maybe to drive them on and give them the extra spark that they have last year to go back on and use it as a motivating tool. I think for me that was a bit of a really strange 35 minutes of football in the second half last year. I just, even after I couldn't fathom it out, I just don't think, I can't see Tyrone playing like that again, over a full game. And I just, if to do it would be great, but that'd be a streamland at the moment, I think.
Not for the neutrals. John, great stuff. Thanks a million. Enjoy the game this weekend. Cheers for joining us.
Thank you. Cheers.
John O'Leary there, giving us a bit of preview and a bit of insight into how things went down in '95 as well.